Is it live? Hello, my astrology friends. We're continuing the 2022 astrology marathon for the 12 signs where one astrologer, internationally known top astrologers, will be presenting one sign per day or two, three signs per day, different astrologers. And today we're doing Scorpio. And Donny from Singapore, an incredible astrologer, most of you know him, will cover the sign of Scorpio for those of you who are Scorpio sun, Scorpio rising in particular, Scorpio moon, especially women can feel very strongly the moon sign. And if you want to see all the videos from the 2022 video marathon, they will be all complete by December the 11th or something like that, or 12th, and they'll be in the playlist called Yearly Horoscope on Lada Duncheva YouTube. So, Donny, welcome, and we can't wait. You've been on top. You like a few months. We've been doing interviews. We do serial killers, death indications. Now Scorpio sign, doom predictions about 2022, which I believe you're right. So, but you have the mic.
Oh yeah. So today we are talking about Scorpio. And just let me share my screen because so for the upcoming probably an hour and a half, I try to keep it short, although it's very hard for me to talk about Scorpio rising, but you also can apply that to Scorpio sun and moon as well. And for Scorpio, I would say that it's a mixed year. Some months will be rougher than the rest, but overall, you're not one of the worst off signs for 2022, I would say. There are still something to take note of, which we will get into. And if we've got time to wrap it up, I will apply whatever that I'll be showing in this presentation to one of the more famous Scorpio rising people, which is Putin. Because I do see something in his chart. He's a Scorpio rising and something is going on with him. It's just one of those rabbit holes that I got myself into like earlier on today when I was going through the edit of the slides. So
do you know that Hitler, they give him with Libra rising, but actually he didn't take his first breath until 30 minutes later. He was left for dead when he was born on the floor, whatever. And 30 minutes later, he took his first breath, or a few minutes later, and then it was Scorpio rising. And to make a lot more sense for me, Hitler's horoscope to be Scorpio rising too. Anyway, Scorpio rising, so I know. I'm a little dictator at home.
Well, and you've got angular planets in Scorpio, right? So you're very easily drawn into the deeper realms of things. Was it Uranus on Midhaven for you in Scorpio? Yeah, you're very much drawn into that shamanic, the invisible realms. Or Scorpio is also regarding the school of life.
Yeah,
as well.
School of hard knocks.
So let me start off 2022 forecast for Scorpio rising, then sun, then moon, by talking about that Venus retrograde in which you guys have already experienced since December when Venus went retrograde. Because Venus will go retrograde all the way up till late January of 2022. So as we start 2022, Venus is already retrograde. And Venus will not leave Capricorn until end of first week of March. So for a good 4 months in which she will stay in the sign of Capricorn. And just a tidbit of extra knowledge, the amount of time that Venus by transit stays in a single sign while she retrogrades, which is 4 months in total, is also equivalent to the approximate time where transit Jupiter goes retrograde as well. So they both last around 4 months. There's that little nugget of astronomical information. And Venus goes retrograde in a sign every 8 years. So the last time she went retrograde in the sign of Capricorn was late 2013 till early 2014. So to kind of paint a macro picture for you, just rewind yourself back 8 years ago to late 2013, early 2014, when Venus was retrograde in the same sign. What was actually going on? Maybe some of the more macro themes may actually play out for you this time as well, but it will be slightly different because this particular one, in which we are experiencing in a few more weeks, when Venus stationed to go retrograde, she's already conjunct Pluto, and she will be in orb extended conjunction with Pluto for a good 2.5 weeks, all throughout December. So you're really feeling these energies for yourself. So for Venus retrograde, it's about thinking more deeply and seriously, because it's in the serious side of Capricorn, where everything is more dire for you. And it's happening in your whole sign third house, which is about, in your mind, what is the most important thing for you. And so I would say that over this Venus retrograde in Capricorn will be a good time for one thing, self-reflection. And also, since it's happening in the third house, maybe do some journaling as well. Some message may actually come through. Some of you may be more in tune with yourself. You may even have spontaneous moments of automatic writing, for that matter, as well.
On a simple level, you can just reconnect with old relatives, siblings, mates, friends. Third house is friends, and so come into your life.
Yeah, that as well. And also some relatives is also third house.
and the bad side of Venus retrograde with Pluto, there you can have some power struggles and have to reevaluate your relationships with neighbors, with relatives, with people in your siblings, brothers, sisters, and teammates, workmates, people in your immediate environment, mates of any sort. So might be some crisis. Venus is with Pluto, some crisis in relationships with such third house people, but also some detoxing. Pluto is like detoxing, and Venus retrograde. I don't want those people in my social media. I put a cross on them, and that's it. Pluto is death, detox. That's it. You're out of my life.
Third house is also YouTube comments, right?
YouTube, Facebook, every social media, and you can be like, I can't read your poisonous comments anymore. That's it,
Well, but then third house, when Venus and Pluto actually kiss, right? I find that particularly for December and leaning into the first part of January 2022, you may actually have a more better understanding of your own psychology because of their Plutonian connection with Venus. And third house is how you want to say things as well.
Your internal narrative, I see.
Yes.
Like how you talk to yourself, how you interpret what's happening. Someone smiles at you, and are you gonna think, oh, they really like me? I'm gonna think they want something from me,
Well, especially Scorpio Rising, right? They want something from me. I think there will be some kind of adjustment, because Venus does one function of Venus is to harmonize, and is to bring more of what is on the other side as well. So you can adjust your behavior after you gain a better understanding of your own psychology, and this may actually help you to become a better you as a result in the end. And I've also
relationships, communications, all of those things. Yeah, some deep.
And by the way, third house is to talk, right? And Venus, Pluto conjunct in your third house, whole sign house. This can actually make you more alluring.
More alluring.
More alluring, more charismatic, and more magnetic. You know what I mean? It just pulls people in. Yeah. And
you talk manipulatively to get what you want.
It's actually a good time. I mean, if you decide to go that way, of course, everything can be used for better or worse depending on the level you want to manifest. But I would say that the intensity of experience will be peaked over I would say around December 10 to right after Christmas on Boxing Day, probably 26th of 2021. And then the next time you're experiencing that will be 3rd of March of 2022. These are the dates where Venus and Pluto actually conjunct.
Mm-hmm.
But this will be mostly felt for the last decan for Scorpio risings, particularly. That means the last 10 degrees, if you have rising in the last 10 degrees of Scorpio. This is because this conjunction will also form like a trine and sextile to your first and seventh house cusp as well. So it actually helps you really in the relationship arena. And if I were to combine the houses for Scorpio rising in particular, that Venus rules. Venus actually rules their 7th house cusp and also 12th house cusp as well. So on top of Venus retrograding in your 3rd house, this can be like reviewing, reflecting, reassessing relationships. Since it's conjunct Pluto and Venus also rules money, it's also about your finances and business opportunities, since it's in the sign of Capricorn. Maybe you want to have that pillow talk, because 12th house can also rule pillow talk in combination with the 3rd house. With your partner, this may not be like a personal partner. This can be also like a business partner, just like close the door and have a little chat kind of conversation. This may actually help you to tweak your future direction. And after Venus finally moves out of Capricorn, you may feel that you're able to make real gains because of the conversations back then that you made.
The difficult conversations you made that you maybe were postponing before, or maybe you didn't have the courage to do.
Yeah, and 3rd house also rules siblings. So, and Capricorn is all things that are very real. And you may actually obtain practical, down-to-earth advice by engaging in discussions with your siblings. But also, like 3rd house can be neighbors, teammates, co-workers. In this case, 3rd house can also be classmates if you're a bit younger or you're still in school. But it also, 3rd house can be pertaining to your immediate network as well, that's around you on a day-to-day basis. And this may actually give you like an inner understanding of the meanings of what fairness and equality is, for that matter. And since Venus actually rules, for Scorpio rising, the 7th house of open enemies, and Venus also rules your 12th house. 12th house can mean very large organization or institution, like a multinational corporation or MNCs. So I've written over here is that open enemies within large organization or institutions or MNCs in which you work in can make you reflect, review, or reassess whether your future way towards success is to stay or to leave, because that house is a decision-making house of sorts. And after you make that decision is to apply your efforts and energy towards something. I've also written here that because Venus rules your 7th and 12th house, 7th house rules committed relationships and 12th house is lands far away from here. So if I combine the 2 houses, it will be something to do with like long distance relationships. And 3rd house, where Venus is retrograding conjunct Pluto, is to whether it comes a time where you may decide realistically. There may be some sobering realizations, and from there you may decide to whether to stay or go and leave some long distance relationships behind, for that matter. And 7th house also rules the court case, the court, and 12th house is things that may have eluded you, which can mean a blind spot. And 3rd house is definitely information and talking. So the last possible manifestation of this is that probably useful information and practical ones as well, pertaining to blind spots. In any long drawn out court cases, this may actually come through lawyers. Lawyers can also be part of the 7th house energies. And this may actually help you to put some kind of resolution or compromise, which is Venus, or truce, TRUCE is also something to do with Venus as well. And all this information that's coming in probably from the lawyer can actually help you to see things on a more holistic level so that you can perhaps finish up on a court case that's drawn out for quite some time already over this Venus retrograde. So the next slide, this particular one is why I actually chose Scorpio Rising or Scorpio as a sign to cover for 2022. For this, I actually applied an ancient method. It actually traced by sign transits of Jupiter and Saturn. So in 2022, Jupiter will be not coming back to Aquarius anymore. Jupiter will be transiting in Pisces and Aries, while Saturn is remaining in Aquarius. So I've actually applied a technique to see what these two planets are harmonically triggering in the zodiacal wheel. And the signs end up being Scorpio and Leo, which is the first house and the 10th house cusp by sign, whole sign house, for Scorpio rising. And hence, because of this, I decide to cover Scorpio as a sign for 2022 because of these two signs activating in your chart. And I've also put down here the dates where transit Jupiter will be in Pisces and will be in Aries. So the next part, I'll be talking a little bit about transit midpoints because I find this is really activating for a lot of people, particularly if they've got important angles or planets in the fixed signs like yourself, Lada. And transit Saturn and Pluto midpoint, direct midpoint, that means the shortest distance between Jupiter and Pluto in the sky. In 2022, they'll be covering the stretch of 4 degrees to 12 degrees of Aquarius. So if you have
Scorpios that are 4 to 12 degrees Sun, Moon, or Ascendant can feel
yes, they'll probably feel it, or they can have other planets like Venus or Mars, you know, that they'll be occupying this midpoint. They'll probably feel it as well. As long as you have 4 to 12 degrees of planets in a fixed sign, you definitely feel it because it will be expecting this transit Saturn-Pluto direct midpoint either by conjunction, opposition, or squares. So I've actually written here so people can read more about what does this transit Saturn-Pluto midpoint is about. So one of the few things is that if you have been one, I know for fixed signs, it can be very easy. If problems come up, they can be at least initially evasive. That's what I found.
I don't understand.
So for example, like if you have transit Saturn, Pluto midpoint, conjunct a certain planet, like probably Venus, you've got Venus at 4 to 12 degrees of a fixed sign. Maybe for you, you have Venus and Scorpio in 4 to 12 degrees. And it's activated by this Saturn-Pluto midpoint. And Venus, as we know, is all about relationships, right? And all that. When this midpoint actually hits your natal Venus, for example, via a square, what happened is that if you have been sweeping things under the rug or just stay in certain relationships way past its expiration date, you will more and more challenges and problems will be brought up to the surface until there's no way for you to avoid it. And then you have to confront it. And then since we're talking about, for example, natal Venus and Scorpio squaring this transit midpoint, this can be that have you been codependent on this relationship for you to feel good? Or is it time to face the truth of the matter, because Saturn and Pluto energy by midpoint, it can really bring up like persistent, swept under the carpet dynamics in the form of challenges, or it can also facilitate some form of like systematic self-exploration. I've written here as well for you to reflect on yourself. And you'll be having this kind of dark, foreboding moods, like something bad is going to happen, but you don't know what is it. And then it actually creates like some form of anxiety and fear when you deal in the sphere of Venus, which is relationships. The example that I just brought up. And it may seem that relationships, Venus, might be like more harder to keep for you, especially those that you treasure, which is Scorpio. So you can see how these things actually play into it. Whenever you have planets 4 to 12 degrees of a fixed sign, the macro circumstances that what will be brought into the surface will be that there's always something regarding returning to an issue, depending on the angle or the planet that's triggered by this transit midpoint, that you need to keep on going back to, because problems keep showing up. And until you truly and completely solve things out, it will still be there throughout 2022. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, or it may be that for the example that I just brought up, like for example, Venus is triggered by this transit midpoint, and you will need extra discipline and endurance just to keep that relationship. It almost kind of like it activates your determination and persistence just to keep it, because it's almost like it's slipping through your hands. That there is that kind of energy. Something of that nature. So if you have 4 to 12 degrees of planets in the fixed signs, then you probably feel it. So this slide I've actually presented before in my mundane astrology for 2022 video on this channel. So I wanted to put this here again because people have asked me, so when the nodal axis changed sign from Gemini, Sag to Taurus and Scorpio, I mentioned the term equality versus equity. So Gemini Sag is all about the ideology of equality, whereas Taurus and Scorpio, where the nodes are shifting into, we'll be talking about equity. So I've actually found one graphic that sweetly summarizes what I'm referring to. So on the left will be the Gemini Sag axis, which is equality. Each one gets like $2 in the bank. But if you're talking about Taurus and Scorpio axis, it is not an equal distribution, but all of them will be on an equal playing field. All of them can actually see the baseball match in this case. So this is the difference or the energetic shifts that we are moving into for the next 18 months. So let's go back to the slides. And it's all about basic shelter and living and the food that we eat as well, because Taurus, that's where the North Node is. All of us will be becoming more resourceful because of that Scorpio South Node, in order to tap or stretch our resources even for longer because of the Taurus North Node. So for Scorpio, particularly rising, it will be in their 1st and 7th house cusp. And transit North Node will be in their 7th house in the sign of Taurus. But it actually the nodes, as we know, are swinging zodiacally backwards, is against the grain of the normal zodiac that we know. So it actually came from the 8th house and it now swings into the 7th house for Scorpio rising. So perhaps previous focus on personal needs and desires are now brought into harmony with needs and feelings of partners for you and those close to you in general. Those are the 7th house people in which it can represent. But 7th house can also mean open enemies or conflicts as well. So I've actually put here like conflicts in personal relationships may actually reveal patterns of sabotage and imbalance for Scorpio rising because the South Node is on the opposite end, which may have not been addressed before. But because of the North Node in the 7th house, this can be resolved or healed over the course of this year and a half for Scorpio risings. And since we're talking about the axis of Scorpio and Taurus, I find that for Scorpio rising, you have the opportunity to experience like a personal rebirth and thrive. Perhaps it's due to some form of guidance, but in some cases, the 7th house can also be some form of intervention as well, brought on by a significant other or partner. And unresolved karmic issues is very much that Scorpio archetype, on top of emotional baggage, of course. It will be dragged up to the surface for further exploration, to be released to attain that balance and harmony, which is what that transit North Node in Taurus in your 7th house is about. And for some of you, North Node transiting the 7th house can enable you to meet like a significant other. This can be someone on a personal level or a business partner as well. And when you meet that person, it can somehow feel like destiny because the North Node is where the soul needs to steer towards. And your instinct will actually tell you that because of the opposite end. You've got Taurus, you've got Scorpio ascendant, with the South Node transiting there. And their influence for you can potentially be life-changing for that matter. But I've written here that be it that they stay for a season or for life. Last but not least, I've also thought of because Scorpio ascendant, right? Scorpio as an archetype is all about merging. So the boundaries can be blurred, and the South Node is transiting there, and the North Node is in your 7th house in Taurus where things are more defined. So maybe there's potentials for Scorpio rising to shift from a dominating personality to become one that's more aware of the needs and boundaries of others. Or maybe there's a chance for Scorpio rising to become more chill when they deal with people. I know it's hard. I know a few Scorpio risings. Myself. So if I were to combine the transit North Node in Taurus and the 7th house as transit K2 or South Node in... If I think about transit North Node in Taurus at the 7th house and transit South Node in Scorpio in your 1st house, the themes can be that maybe you're learning to be more relaxed, content, and present with another person from the fact that you are learning to let go of the need to control your environment, which can actually help you ease up on that constant self-doubting or that black and white or all or nothing way of seeing things or approach to life. I also find that for Scorpio rising, they actually possess some sort of an incessant ideological fault-finding ways with your own perspective. So when the South Node is transiting in your 1st, there can be some sort of realization that I may need to either stop doing that or at least do that thing less. Because otherwise, there's this thing about Scorpio rising that can be, you're always on the edge regarding something. And hence, you know, we all, when we talk about Scorpio, the first keyword is intense, or one of the few keywords. But with that transit North Node in Taurus in your 7th house, I would say that that can be incoming connections and subsequent relationships with people that may be on the stable, dependable, practical side. And there's a chance for you to build potentially a steady, reliable, trusting, and long-lasting relationships when I see the nodes transiting the 1st and 7th house. And they may actually provide you with real support so that you can take the risk that you need to deconstruct the very lens of your own identity. This is how they can help you on a more psychological astrology level. And taking your time in getting comfortable, that means like time to chill out a bit more. When the South Node actually transit your ascendant degree, just look out for plus minus perhaps like 1.5 degrees on each side for yourself, depending what degree your Scorpio rising degree is. Because for that period where South Node is transiting your ascendant point, you may be feeling more tired than usual. So if you've been one that's like constantly a busy bee running around doing a lot of things, you may want to just wind down for that period where the transit South Node is plus minus 1.5 degrees from your ascendant point. I think that's about it for this slide. And since we're talking about the nodes, I want to touch more about the eclipses because it's very much tied to the nodal axis that we just mentioned. So in 2022, we've got 4 eclipses in total, not the crazy 6 that we experienced previously. And the first one will actually occur on 30th of April of next year, and that will happen in your 7th house in Taurus, depending where your ascendant degree is, by the way. But it will happen at 10 degrees, 28 minutes of Taurus. And for this particular eclipse, the major or macro themes, according to the Saros cycle, because eclipses are actually in families of themes in which they play out. So this particular Saros cycle, which is represented by this solar eclipse in late April, will be concerning like your relationship with father figures, authority figures, or the need to take responsibility or control of something. In your 7th house is pertaining to 7th house themes. And it's also time to perhaps accept any commitments that present itself to you. And this commitment can be due to another person's unreliability or illness as well, because of the aspects that this family of eclipses have, which is right here in blue. And since it's happening in your 7th house, on the flip side, since it's a North Node eclipse and it's happening in your 7th house, this may actually lead to marriage if you're looking for someone or have been in relationship with someone and you want to take it to another level and sign that piece of paper to officialize it. But then it can also be that there can be struggles and shifts regarding your closest friends, which is also represented by the 7th house as well. Someone powerful in which you form a tie with may enter your life, which is completely new. North Node brings very alien experiences in which the soul needs to and live in this lifetime. And it also brings some sort of new energy into your social life. So just look at around this period, because eclipses may not be just only that day, but it's like a wave of energy. You may be asked to participate in more social events or be invited to one more. And that's when you probably meet someone for that matter. And seventh house is also about legal issues. So I would say that because seventh house is really about the first house that we go out into the world. So this house can also mean others, but others, the definition of others is very broad. And this can be marriage and business partners, adversaries, open enemies, counselors, and advisors. All these are seventh house themes. And when this eclipse actually hit, there might be movements pertaining to them. Some may actually move into your life, some may actually exit your life for that matter. So the next eclipse, 2 weeks after this solar eclipse, will be a lunar one. And this one is a South Node lunar eclipse happening on the 16th of May of 2022 at 25 degrees 18 minutes of Scorpio. And I've actually written like a Facebook post that I think since after the Aquarius blue moon that we had, all the full moons are occurring in the last few degrees of the zodiac. And we recently have a lunar eclipse at 27 degrees of Taurus. And so this kind of full moon at around the last few degrees of a sign will keep continuing, all the way up till this lunar eclipse at 25 Scorpio, before it moves further back in terms of zodiacal degree. So there'll be a lot of, if you have planets or angles of your chart that has its presence in the very late degrees, like the last 5 degrees of a sign, you'll be feeling it leading up to this lunar eclipse, way before it actually happened. So this eclipse is happening in your first house by whole sign house system, and is a South Node lunar eclipse. So this can actually expose some kind of personal issues of a partner, or some kind of social affair that pull you into some kind of drama, as well as some kind of crisis of sorts, because it's in Scorpio, right? But on the flip side, when I think about a full moon, is something that's blossoming out in the open. So this led me to think that when this lunar eclipse actually hit in your first house, which is a South Node lunar eclipse, this can also be indicative of an engagement or the beginning of a partnership or marriage planning for that matter. I've seen it happen myself. And since it's a lunar eclipse and it's a South Node, means something is coming into completion. Something is about to leave or excrete you. It's excrete from you. That South Node energy. And so if you've got some legal matters that started some time ago, there's a good chance that it may end over this South Node lunar eclipse, by the way. But since we're talking about a lunar eclipse whereby there's a sun and moon opposition, and the sun for this lunar eclipse is in your whole sign 7th house. So this can actually represent help or assistance coming from a significant other, or that they're the ones who are calling the shot, because the South Node is in your first house. So the power lies in the North Node, them as well. So the next two eclipses, the first one will be a south node solar eclipse right at the beginning of Scorpio season at 2 degrees Scorpio. And the Saros cycle is 6 south. And this family of eclipses have got this imprint of what's written here, but the theme will be surrounding, taking power, and being forceful. And this eclipse at 2 degrees of Scorpio can have like a very chaotic energy. It can be also quite manic as well. And you perhaps need to pull up your sleeves and gain strength in the relationship arena. For example, maybe previously that you've not had the strength of leaving a relationship, and then this solar eclipse comes along, it's like, boom, off you go. It opens up a whole new door of freedom. It liberates you. But since this group of family of solar eclipses have this signature of Venus, Uranus, and the node, this leads me to think that some of you who are single and ready to mingle out there, you may suddenly fall in love, or there's sudden offers of sexual encounters coming your way as well. Just things that's very sudden. And since Uranus can rule like friends with benefits, maybe over this solar eclipse, you may gain one or several, depending, no judgment here. And some of you may be falling out of love because of that south node energy in which things are excreted from you. So this is happening in your first house, like I mentioned. So on top of whatever that the eclipses are trying to tell you, when this south node solar eclipse occurs, you may be more inclined to have a more holistic approach to in matters of self-care. Maybe over this solar eclipse, you may take more time out for yourself as well, since it's happening in your first house and it's a south node eclipse. Usually for eclipses, it puts it's like a lunation on steroids. So even before the actual eclipse happened, in late October of 2022, I would say the month of October for Scorpio risings, they may feel a bit low energy for that matter. So if you need to take time out or rearrange certain commitments in order to free your space up, please do. And for those who have been wanting to have a more holistic approach to healing, it may be also quite good to start around this eclipse. It can be like homeopathic remedies. It can be like a nutritionist, or some may actually want to choose intermittent fasting to actually rebalance their biochemistry, which is also very Scorpio as well, to actually enhance your well-being. And if you can free yourself from commitments and come back to those later, please do. But with this solar eclipse, I also find that a partner may be also initiating freedom. That means like, I need my space. Let's like kind of come together not as often. We don't have to merge or bond like so deeply, and I want to have my own space for a bit. And you both may have some thoughts surrounding that. Last but not least, you may gain some kind of powerful realization or education about your behavior within relationships as well. It gets reflected back to you. And the very last eclipse of 2022 will be a North Node lunar eclipse happening on 8th of November. at 16 degrees of Taurus. And this one will happen in your 7th house again. This one is a North Node lunar eclipse. So I combine North Node's meaning and the lunar eclipse meaning and the 7th house meaning. It actually tells me that it can show you a brand new way to conduct your relationships, or you may be involved in a major social event, receiving invitations to join, even organize one yourself. Maybe you're feeling more festive. Because 8th of November is just after Halloween, right? And it's for Northern America. You guys are also approaching to celebrate Thanksgiving as well. So for Scorpio rising, I would say that social events may actually pick up over this November period. You may also be introduced to a regimen of sorts that can put you in a positive direction. And you may feel that over this North Node lunar eclipse in your 7th house, there's an inkling that you may be in the right place at the right time, for that matter, because of the North Node, the destiny kind of meanings that's attached to it. Or, since 7th house is also regarding lawsuits and all that, if you have been slept with one, or you want to seek out counsel or lawyers, for that matter, this lunar eclipse will be quite a great one to do just that. And last but not least, since we're talking about Scorpio rising, and one of the keywords for Scorpio is drama. With this lunar eclipse, you may also find that there can be like a major drama happening for you. Since it's a lunar eclipse, so the sun and moon are opposing each other. And the sun is in your 1st house, the moon is in your 7th house. So there's this kind of projection going on. So there's a major drama regarding a loved one that can actually dominate your attention and energies, which can drain you. So you may want to look out for that. And the last time these eclipses actually occur will be in 2003. These 4 eclipses that I just mentioned. So if you want to just rewind back to 2003, because the same eclipse points are more or less activated in your chart, you may want to zip back to 2003 and see what's really going on the macro picture. Of course, these 4 eclipses will have very different configuration, except the eclipse point than the previous ones that's happening in 2003. But you can roughly see like, oh, certain things are happening, or there's certain developments that's going to occur to continue that narrative from 2003. Lada, are you still there? Right, I shall continue then. So the next part I want to...
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the comments.
Okay. So the next part I want to talk about are your ascendant co-rulers, which are Mars and Pluto. So let's talk about the modern ruler, which is Pluto. Transit Pluto will be going retrograde in very late April, all the way up to end of 1st week of October in 2022, and it will happen in your 1st house. In your 3rd house. Sorry, is in Capricorn. So for Scorpio risings, you've been actually going through that inner transformation to get less reserved and more comfortable in speaking your truth. Although I must say that when Scorpio risings speak their truth, it can come out in a way that it may not be as well perceived as they think, because of the Capricorn 3rd house. But having said that, you yourself are deciding for yourself that you want to make your voice heard, and you want to express your ideas into the world, and hence you're being more proactive for that. This can actually help you to become more present in your surroundings. And you may actually, while Pluto is transiting your whole sign 3rd house, you may actually get some really practical, useful, and potentially life-changing advice from others as well, for that matter. And power dynamics is Pluto. And 3rd house is siblings. So I wonder if while Pluto is transiting your 3rd house, there have been some kind of power struggles regarding a mature or elder sibling. This can actually take place, for that matter. Or 3rd house can also be teammates and also relatives as a whole. It may play up over this retrograde period. And for the traditional ruler, Mars will actually go retrograde in 2022, starting from just before Halloween on 30th of October, all the way to January 12th into 2023. Now, after I relooked at the whole dynamics of 2022 as a whole year, I find that Mars is actually the key player of 2022, because transit Mars is somehow tied into all the major formations in the sky throughout 2022. So for people who are Scorpio and Aries rising, or if they've got a profected year in 2022 that falls under the sign of Aries or Scorpio, 2022 will be a very important year for you, by the way. And also, Mars retrograde will happen in the sign of Gemini for this cycle, and it activates all the 2020 and 2021 eclipses that we just had all over again for those months. What I've put here is only the retrograde period, but the cycle is longer than that because Mars swings 3 times. And this is happening in your natal 8th house for Scorpio rising. So there can be, and 8th house is a natural domain of the Scorpio archetype. And in the sign of Gemini, which is a very curious sign, by the way, and Mars is activating that natal 8th house of yours for an extended period of time, this can actually intensify the insatiable curiosity with matters pertaining to fear of the unknown, which is 8th house, intimacy, sex, death and rebirth, and the afterlife as well, which is the 8th house domain. And 8th house, like I mentioned earlier, is also something to do with shamanic rituals and practices, or it also can be the school of hard knocks, like what Lada mentioned as well. But you'll be processing this on a very Gemini or Geminian intellectual level. And so you may be motivated actually over this Mars retrograde period to study as much as you can to get there in order to facilitate inner understanding, because 8th house is depth psychology as well. So you may be very curious to tap into, maybe for those who have not booked a reading with an astrologer, maybe this is the time during Mars retrograde for you guys. But however, when Mars is also a planet that's somewhat separative, and 8th house is about emotional support from another. So there can be some kind of, or at least feelings of powerlessness regarding sibling issues, because it happens in the sibling sign of Gemini, that you find that it's very hard to be on the same page. You just can't stop fighting because you don't feel supported by that sibling, for example. Eighth house can also rule taxes and loans, and Gemini is paperwork. So over this Mars retrograde, just look out for paperwork submitted for loans doesn't get approved as you would like to as well. Also, eighth house also rule taxes. So you may get a tax bill that can be more than what you expected, for that matter. And eighth house, like I mentioned earlier, is regarding sexual and intimacy issues. Maybe when Mars retrograde in Gemini, in your natal eighth house, there can be a lot of mental chatter, because that's what Gemini does best, mental chatter. And eighth house is all about sex and intimacy. So you may be feeling over this Mars retrograde in your natal eighth house that you may not be feeling as desirable sexually to your partner. Or there can be some kind of conflicting sexual needs and desires that needs to be trashed out and talked about, Gemini, in order to sort this out. Eighth house is also where interests and desires are expressed. And when Mars is retrograde in the eighth house is actually like a dark house on top of the 6th and 12th, and also the second house, actually. Those are dark houses because these houses don't make major aspects to the ascendant and descendant axis. So there can be like it's almost like your desire and interest. When Mars is retrograding there in your eighth house, there may be a lack of, you're not feeling as energetic to go out there and achieve as much. It's almost like a more introspective and reflective time for you. That's how I would view it. Or maybe that since eighth house is also about emotional support from another person, and Mars is to reject. So if you reach out over this Mars retrograde and ask for help and support from, for example, close friends and loved ones, you may get rejected, which is Mars as well. So the rest of it, I suppose you guys can read all this, in which I will skip to the next slide because I've got a lot of things to cover. So I just put a slide here for a note on transit Neptune, because transit Neptune will be in your natal 5th house, and it will be joined by transit Jupiter one time as a conjunction. But then Jupiter by transit will actually swing backwards into very late degree Pisces, and you'll stay there for a bit to actually help you out on that 5th house matters. And I've actually put here that mid-April to end May, we do have a transit Jupiter and Neptune conjunction, but then Mars will actually activate the conjunction point. I think it's at 23 Pisces. So this period will be a highlight in your 5th house matters. And I would say that November 2022 is another period whereby you'll be experiencing this Neptunian 5th house transit. And this is because transit Mars will be in Gemini, and you'll be squaring that transit Neptune and Jupiter in late Pisces. So this month and this period, it'll be very Neptunian for you. And when I say Neptunian, this can be very good for creative self-expression because it's in a sign of Pisces. It also can be very imaginative, very intuitive, and very creative as well, almost like a visionary expression. So if you want to brainstorm for some things for the future, I would say that these 2 periods are actually pretty good for you. And 5th house is also anything to do with risk-taking investments and business plans. So some things can be birthed in these 2 periods over the whole of 2022. But since Neptune is not, it's probably one of the least grounded planets out there, I would say you still need to just hold back a little bit after you scribble everything down. You may want to check all those for workability or practicality, rather than let pure enthusiastic ideals and speculation come through for you, because what you have in your head doesn't necessarily translate into the tangible, practical world. And 5th house is also the house of your first child. So these 2 periods, I would say for Scorpio rising, if you want to have, or you've been trying for a child, this can be a period for ladies to have an increased fertility or bigger chance to get pregnant. So if you're not planning to have a child in 2022, or get pregnant in 2022 for that matter, take the necessary precautions, because there's a tendency for you to feel more fertile down there. And it's also about examining some dynamics pertaining to a child, a teacher, or a lover figure in your life. Maybe you have put unrealistic expectations, or you expect more than they can deliver for them in your life. And there's this kind of reliance or codependency thing going on, or there's kind of like a seeing through rose-colored glasses pertaining to those people I just mentioned. And when these 2 periods swing by, you may feel that a bubble has been burst. And there can be a kind of disillusionment and also some kind of disappointment. Because when I think about Pisces 5th house energy for Scorpio rising, there can be this kind of projection of or that yearning to want a hero or a savior. And when these 2 periods swing about, the bubble has been burst, and there's this kind of realization that, oh, okay, I have to be my own savior and hero now. There's this kind of realization surrounding that. And 5th house, last but not least, is pertaining to hobbies, things you do in your downtime. So as 5th house is also your inner child as well. It's the natural domain of Leo as a sign. So there can be this kind of picking up hobbies to nurture your imaginative, creative, and visionary inner child. You may actually feel a push to pick up something pertaining to that. And 5th house, I must mention, is also the house of entrepreneurship. So maybe you've been kind of hesitant to even think about setting a company all by yourself and be an entrepreneur. 5th house. And when Jupiter, Neptune swings by in the same area of your chart, and then Mars actually squares that in November, but conjuncts that in April to May, there may be this kind of yearning and energetic motivation for you to at least have preliminary planning towards those goals as well. And I just want to put a slide here because the transit Saturn and Uranus square in the sky, we've experienced it 3 times, 3 exact squares in 2021, but in 2022 is still very much active. And in 2022, this square will also be highlighted by the eclipses, be it one or both planets. So this energy is still very much active into next year. And Saturn is in your 4th house. And Uranus is in your 7th house, both angular houses. So what this can bring up is that you have a very good chance in 2022 to bring more authenticity to matters that involve relationships, first and foremost. Maybe for some of you, because Saturn is in a 4th house, you may be feeling like suffocated or very responsibility ridden with home life, and also on some level within a relationship, because Uranus is squaring it from the 7th, and you just need to somehow shake things up, which can, on a level, create some revolution. If you've been feeling that things have been stagnating for a very long time, but it also can bring about some kind of tumultuousness as well in relationships, for your home and living environment for that matter. Maybe because 7th house is a partner, 4th house is the home you live in, maybe it's a decision or like you're feeling kind of torn for you as a couple unit to move to a new house, but then there's conflict surrounding like, oh, I want to stay in this state, and your partner wants to stay in another state, and there's this kind of back and forth thing going on. It's very much alive in 2022. And 4th house is also one of the parental axis, 4th and 10th. 4th and 10th can, particularly the 4th, it also can be family members as well in general. So parents or family members can actually disapprove of your love relationship and may exert pressure to make you abide by perhaps a more traditional or conservative fashion. For some of you, you may be having a foreign national as a partner. And this particular square for Scorpio Rising, if you're in that situation, it can be that, oh, because this person is not is outside our culture and race, and hence you can't be with that person. There's this kind of dynamics going on, or that you want to be together with someone that's of a different caste system or different socio-economical background, and then your parents and family members step in and say, hell to the no. You know, there's this kind of energy going on as well. And but this square in the 4th and 7th, the restrictiveness from the 4th house may actually push your 7th house, Uranus by transit, into wanting more excitement. You may actually rebel. You may actually take more breathing space from home, for example, in order to experience something that excites you for once. And I've also written here, there's another scenario that 4th house is also a home. And some of you may be moving your home base, not because you want to, but you're trying to accommodate the needs of the partner. There's this square going on, which can manifest as that. And 7th house can also mean someone's love life on a certain level. And that can challenge your early life conditionings as well. 4th house can be early life conditionings, and Saturn there actually crystallizes some of that. So I've written here that your love life may actually challenge some of your assumptions about your family and living space, but this also is about early life conditionings as well. So it's asking you to re-examine and shift some of those inherited beliefs that you have grew up with, 4th house. And some of you, as I mentioned earlier, Saturn really brings about more of the grind of life. There'll be more responsibilities and stuff. And in the 4th house, it can be from a It can be from the family or from a parent. Maybe for some of you, one of your parents are getting old and are not, he or she may not be feeling well. And then you've taken on that burden to help out financially because they are not able to, especially in the situation we are living in. Some of you maybe need to take on more jobs in order to make that happen. And that kind of robs you of your ability to do your own thing, which is that Uranus in the 7th house transit. So there's this kind of tugging back and forth. And this energy, you may find that throughout 2022, you'll be feeling it, particularly over the eclipse season. Because this square is highlighted by the eclipses, be it one planet in that square or both planets in the square, is somehow activated. And you'll be finding that all these themes will be playing out more or quite a bit. Yeah. I think at one point, Saturn and Uranus will also be within a degree to square each other exactly in 2022. So that's another period whereby you may want to look out for as well. So now let's approach the last part. We've not talked about Mercury retrograde. And I must say that in 2022, we have 3.5 Mercury retrogrades. We usually have 3 in a year, but then there's one at the end of 2022 that's partial. So I count that as like half a Mercury retrograde. So let's start with the first Mercury retrograde. That's on 14th of January all the way to 3rd of February. And this occurs in the late degrees of Capricorn all the way to 10 degrees of Aquarius. So this happens in your whole sign, 3rd and 4th houses. So let's start with the 3rd house, which means that Capricorn. What can it actually mean for you? 3rd house is really the learning house. And when Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, partially into your 3rd house, you may find that you may be madly in love with certain subjects or topics of interest, because 3rd house is your interest. And 3rd house is also talking as well. When Mercury retrogrades over there, because Capricorn is like a say like I mean it kind of energy, so things can be kind of come out to some people too harsh or crude for that matter. So it's always nice to bear in mind to have a graceful and persuasive way of speaking rather than just go all out and just be blunt and just like go on the attack, because that can be the case. But Mercury is retrograde by transit, so you may take more time to process information before you speak, which can be useful. 3rd house can also be that putting your efforts into developing artistic talents for that matter. But since it's happening in Capricorn, which means that artistic talent that you want to develop is something that you've done before in the past or have thought about in the past, but now is the time to take it up. And Mercury retrograde in the 3rd house can also give you very profound problem-solving skills as well. Because 3rd house is a problem-solving house. And then while Mercury is retrograde in a sign of Capricorn, Mercury actually conjuncts Pluto also as part of the equation. So that Plutonian getting down to the gutter of things and to have penetrative insights, or you may understand yourself on a more depth psychology level of how you conduct your relationships as well. There's a 3rd house thing. And regarding the fourth house, when Mercury is retrograding in Aquarius, this can be a time for reassessment of your home situation, for that matter, because fourth house is home. That also can be very important in-depth talks with be it your parent, one of your parents, and also family members that can come up as well. Maybe there's some previous misunderstanding pertaining to this relative said this person said this inside, the family emblem, and then and it was actually unresolved before. And this Mercury retrograde, partially in Aquarius, actually may bring up the desire to go back to that, be it misunderstanding or miscommunication, and trash those out. It can be good for that. But then in the sign of Aquarius, just look out for words that come out from your mouth that can be overly snarky and sarcastic, because Aquarius can be like a dry humor, and sometimes people can take it the wrong way as well. And so for the second Mercury retrograde, that's starting on 24th of April, all the way to 10th of May of 2022. This one happens ranging from 26 Taurus all the way to 4 degrees of Gemini. And this happens in your natal 7 and 8 house. This particular Mercury retrograde will be one that's longer than most in terms of impact, because when Mercury stationed direct, it actually triggers the mid-November 2021 lunar eclipse that we just had at 27 Taurus again. So there's this kind of lunar eclipse activation point energy that comes along with it. And this Mercury retrograde in April and May also occurs over that lunar eclipse that we mentioned on 16th of May earlier of 2022 at 25 of Scorpio. And so if we talk about the Mercury retrograde happening in your 7th house, in the sign of Taurus, this can be really a good time to kind of air your opinion, or worse, for any relationship grievances that's previously unexpressed. And you may also put more effort in over this Mercury retrograde to clarify any misunderstandings that can actually allow space for everyone to express themselves, for that matter. And Mercury retrograde can be someone coming back as well, since it's happening in your 7th house of relationships. So an ex-partner or ex-close friend of yours from the past may reappear. And this can be serving as the perfect opportunity for you to resolve old hurts. Even if at the end of the day, it's just agreeing to bury the hatchet and just move on with your individual lives and not seeing each other ever again, it is also the golden opportunity for that. Because Mercury retrograde in the 7th house for you, Scorpio Rising, it's really to release some kind of baggage of sorts. So, as I mentioned earlier, some people stay for a season, some people stay for life. And when this Mercury retrograde swings along in your 7th house, this can really be a chance to address certain stuff, let it go. Maybe after you let it go, you may want to keep that person around, perhaps, or you may decide to let that person go altogether. the choice is yours. But it's very good for trashing out the past dynamics that happen between you guys. And partially this Mercury retrograde happens in Gemini, which is your whole sign 8th house. So while Mercury is there, depending whether it's expecting some of your planets, I would say that this 8th house Mercury retrograde, while it's there in the first 4 degrees of Gemini, you'll be double checking any agreements and documents pertaining to shared resources and finances. And this will actually help you to avoid any screw-ups or misunderstandings or miscommunication down the line, because Mercury is coming from the 8th house to the 7th, swinging back and forth. And while that is happening, you may want to research in depth and perhaps also reread any fine prints before signing agreements and contracts with other people, especially when it's financial or property related ones, for that matter. It's also a good time to discuss shared finances and resources if you and a loved one have been kind of like, okay, this pandemic situation, how are we going to reshuffle the money that we have in our joint account? You know, like as I mentioned earlier, like fiat currency, sooner or later might be up in flames and it'll be crashing in some way, shape, or form in the near future. And so there may be this serious, in-depth 8th house conversation. Gemini. Maybe one person has pitched another way of diversifying your portfolio. Maybe buying gold, silver, or Bitcoin, whatever that is. And this Mercury retrograde in early Gemini comes up and you two are like sitting there as like, why not we actually start to plan things? And when Mercury comes back into early Gemini, finishing its shadow degrees, you guys can actually go ahead and do such things. This period while it's retrograde is more of like getting to sort out any knots before and also during present conversation before you guys proceed. I've also written here that it's also a good time to review financial planning and investments. And I would say that Mercury retrograde, just hold your horses regarding entering into new territories and new arrangements. Just hold your horses. Perhaps after the Mercury has cleared the final shadow degrees, then things become clearer. You get all the necessary information. Yeah, because I find that over Mercury retrograde, we can be more reactive towards information that's incoming as well. So, and knowing that it's coming from the 8th house for Scorpio rising, it can be emotionally entangled or based decisions. So you probably need the extra time while transit Mercury cleared its shadow degrees, that okay, like I can finally have all the prospectus or all the brochures that I need, or all the internet research that all the information from internet research that I've gathered to kind of see for yourself that, oh, okay, like, yeah, this can be done. 8th house is also about self-examination and exploring your thoughts and feelings towards important matters of life when we talk about 8th house Gemini energy. So over this time, on a more psychological level, you may be asking yourself very difficult questions, for that matter, and silently wait for those answers to arise within you, because that's how the 8th house actually function. While waiting for those insights to come to you, while Mercury is retrograde there, this can actually lay the foundations for your significant inner changes that's coming up in the following months, because Mars will also enter Gemini and go retrograde there, but it won't be touching the degrees of this Mercury retrograde. Mars will actually be stationed direct at 8 degrees of Gemini. But it will only pass by the first 4 degrees of Gemini once. And so there can be this kind of reflection going on, I would say. And when Mars actually stationed direct in early 2023, you feel that it's pretty close to 4 degrees of Gemini, or 4 degrees away. So by then, in early 2023, you'll be having a lot of insights that's gained in the last few months of 2022 that will lay your 2023's foundation, for that matter. And you'll be unloading a lot of previous emotional baggage as well, for that matter. And if sexual or intimacy issues or problems arise, because it's in the 8th house, because it's the 8th house, this tells me that it is the issues that arise over this Mercury retrograde, they are just a symptom that's occurring via current circumstances than a deeper issue that's in need of attention as well. And since we talk about Gemini as being a very experimentative and very curious sign, so this can be a very interesting time as well to experiment or revisit or even explore more ways of having sex. You know, all that things. But 8th house, there's also another meaning. 8th house, when I look at cheaters in a relationship, I look at the 8th house as well. And when Mercury goes retrograde there, partially at least, there can be some kind of news regarding relationship deceptions that's going on that may get revealed. So the 3rd Mercury retrograde is happening in September to October, starting from the 9th of September to the 2nd of October. And this will happen ranging from 24th of Virgo all the way to 9 degrees of Libra. And this happens in your 11th and 12th houses for Scorpio Rising. And I would say that this also has remnants of the previous Mercury retrograde, in that the flavor or the energy of this Mercury retrograde will be happening for a longer period of time. Because in October to mid-November of 2022, and then the next period will be mid-March of 2023, Mars will be squaring the station retrograde point. 24th of Virgo, where Mercury will station retrograde, and then Mars will station retrograde at 24 to 25 of Gemini. So it's a Virgo Gemini square there. So now let's just briefly go through when Mercury retrograde is happening in your 11th house. In the sign of Virgo, what does that mean? 11th house, how I would define it, is your homies or your girlfriends that you hang out with. Is also the random people that you meet at the bar, like happy hour buddies. That can be also very 11th house. But 11th house can also be labor unions, particularly in the sign of Virgo, organizations, club societies, and also associations as well. And clans, CLANS, are also 11th house places. So when Mercury is retrograde there, there can be almost like a withdrawal from these social scenes or networks, which is also 11th house themes. This may happen via circumstances that happen to you or by choice for that matter. And if either or of these situations happen, it's really for you to take the time out to refine, reform, regroup, and rediscover what qualities within acquaintance-driven friendships that you really, really want. And when this Mercury retrograde finishes up by itself, you will move on with the right ones that's according to your revised list, Virgo list, of criteria or shared interests that you long for in your homies. And you also, at the same time, weed out connections that no longer serve you. And for some, you may actually discover who your real friends are over this period. While Mercury is retrograde in your 11th house, and also, if I use derivative houses, the 11th house is 5 houses away from the 7th. So this can be misunderstanding or miscommunications, like what Mercury retrograde is all about. But there can be some kind of hidden information as well with Mercury retrograde that may come out. And this can be pertaining to 11th house, things like friends, groups. But for some, since it's 5th from the 7th, which is the partner's lover, there may be some kind of uncovering. Probably you discover on your partner's phone text messages, Mercury, that he or she has got a side piece other than you. There can be something like that going on as well. Or 11th house, like I mentioned earlier, can be like a friends with benefits, which is the 11th house domain. And there may be some kind of news that kind of leaves a bitter taste in your mouth over this Mercury retrograde in your 11th that you may decide to kind of pull yourself away from. And if you're feeling that there's a lot of noise that's coming to you over this Mercury retrograde, I think it would be wise to adopt the hear no evil, speak no evil motto over this period. This will help you to kind of silence the noise that's throwing you off from your inner balance, because you may be feeling more reactive and confronting than usual, because Mercury is coming from Libra, swinging backwards to Virgo, from your 12th to the 11th. This will give you time to actually distill the information that's coming to you rather than just like react, just keep reacting to things. For some, it may be a 7th house is court case and 5th house is speculative investments. So the 11th house, 5th from the 11th, which is the 11th, 5th from the 7th, which is the 11th house, can mean a risk-filled or an investment-oriented court case that you've been undergoing. During this Mercury retrograde, it can also go on a hiatus or is adjourned, only to be reconvened when this Mercury retrograde period is over. 11th house is also about hopes and dreams as well. So when Mercury retrograde swings back into your 11th house or within the 11th house space, it gives you a chance to recapture a dream or hope that you once had in order to feel inspired about the future. And since it's happening in the sign of Virgo, you may be combing through or sifting through Virgo, which research networks actually work best for you in order to strive for your goal moving forward. That may be a very good thing to do. So how about in Libra, where this Mercury retrograde is going in your natal 12th house? It's all about recharging yourself and on a certain level, redeeming your inner balance and grace, because it happens in a sign of Libra. And you'll be very pulled to explore your inner psychology, which is the 12th house sphere of life. And when Mercury is retrograde there, I've found that it can actually bring you messages from your deep unconscious mind, but it can be done also through dreams as well while you're sleeping, because 12th house is when you're sleeping. And this can actually bring up some kind of past karma, which is 12th house, or any childhood pains, which is also 12th house, as 12th house matters as well. This can be like flushed out like a tsunami in your buried psyche. There's 12th house stuff. And since Mercury is to write and to journal, it may be nice to keep track and journal your dreams over this Mercury retrograde period. And this may actually provide you with the necessary information that you need to be aware of. 12th house, I also found that is something to do with past lives. So images and messages, be it in your waking hours or when you're asleep, may also surface. And you'll be kind of working through relational karmic pain, if be it like from the past as an adult or even going further back as a kid. Because 12th house is like the skeletons in the closet that we hold close to. For some of you, it may also be a good time for shamanic rituals or depth psychology exploration as well, that may actually help you to release this kind of karma, because Mercury for you actually rules the 8th house, which is the occult metaphysical house, and is in a sign of Gemini, which is to go on that journey, on that road, the shamanic journey. It can be one of the few things you may want to look at. This will help you to release any past relationship pain or traumas, for that matter. And for some of you, because Libra is in your 12th house, 12th house is also regret of some sorts. And Libra, it also can rule someone that you wanted to marry. So I wonder if for some of you, when this Mercury retrograde swings in this part of the zodiac, partially in your 12th house, you may be reminiscing or also regretting certain things that happened in the past pertaining to a perhaps it's a failed trip to the altar. Maybe previously you had cold feet, that's why you just last minute bail out of a marriage. I know of a few cases of like that. And when Mercury was fully in their 12th house last year in Libra, they were so upset that, he's actually, or he or she is a very good person, and I just gotten cold feet and just bailed. Like, it's that runaway groom or bride syndrome that you regret doing to the other person, and there's this kind of reminiscing about the old times, whether he or she is the one who you've abandoned or he or she is the one who got away. There's this kind of energy going on. And I've also put that check the fine prints of any documents, Mercury, pertaining to inheritances, taxes, loans, or other bank stuff carefully, because Mercury does rule your 8th house in the sign of Gemini. Do not gloss through the fine prints. Literally, if you need extra time, or if you can ask for extra leniency to have more time to analyze those things along the way over this period, and don't commit to anything after you've read everything and dissected everything. in the 12th house as well, when Mercury goes retrograde, you may feel that because 12th house is also a very lonely house, it's a place where you either voluntarily or involuntarily go to be alone. So if you are needing someone to lean on, unfortunately, over this Mercury retrograde in your 12th house, you may not receive the appropriate response. For example, you want to send a text or call someone, hey, can you come over I need to cry something out or need someone to lean on, and the person says, sorry, I'm busy. It tends to happen more over Mercury retrograde like this. And I think the main thing of this Mercury retrograde in Libra in your natal 12th house is about you realizing that you can change the way you think about things, particularly relational regrets. And if you've been telling yourself only bad things about relationships, try over this Mercury retrograde to spin the narrative around and tell yourself the same tales or words, but with a happy or fairy tale ending instead. This may actually shift your energy to manifest supportive relationships that you yourself deserve, I would say. And 12th house, nonetheless, is all about that spiritual, mystical life. So I would say that when your 12th house, there's a Mercury retrograde going on, you'll be more psychically sensitive to subtle vibrations. And you'll be very aware of those things as well. So why not take this Mercury retrograde while it's still in Libra to have some sort of practice that leads to some form of spiritual renewal or reconsecration as well of some sorts. And you will find that synchronicity while Mercury is still in your whole sign 12th house, that it becomes magical for you. I've actually written here, because your 12th house is in a sign of Libra, that you may want to meditate in a group environment, perhaps, because Mercury swings back to your 11th in Virgo, which rules holistic practices, Virgo. So you may want to meditate as a group, perhaps around this time that may help you. Remove your mental chains is another. If there's anything that's you need to, is undoing your self-undoing. That's how I would say it, because 12th house is about self-undoing. You may also want to set up an altar. Maybe you want a Venus altar because Venus rules Libra. You may want to have a goddess altar, have like pink candles, some nice perfume, a rose quartz candle holder, for example. That can be a very nice one, or set your intent to manifest your future partner for yourself. That can be a very good practice for that. I think mainly is about surrendering and connecting to the mysteries of the universe, because 12th house is very cosmic in nature, and it's a very magical house if you know how to tap into it, for that matter. And last but not least, there's a partial Mercury retrograde in the last 3 days of December in 2022 that will happen fully in Capricorn from 8 to 24 degrees. And this fully happens in your 3rd house. So 3rd house, travel disruptions, delays, all those things in your everyday life may come through. If you've been driving a very old car, Capricorn, 3rd house, it may be time to check your vehicle before this Mercury retrograde takes place, in case that over this retrograde period, your vehicle actually breaks down, because that can happen. And it's very important for you to strategize and structure your words, because third house can be all forms of correspondences like emails, text messages, all that. So take your time to really like structure your sentences better. Don't try to use short form, I would say, because Capricorn wants things really clear and spelled out for that matter. If you use short form, there may be a chance for embarrassing situations for that matter. And that house is also siblings, so you may want to check in with them over this time. They may actually need your support over this Mercury retrograde, especially if they feel that they've been laboring a lot, just grinding through life or going through a really hard time, because Capricorn can mean austerity or circumstances of austerity for that matter. And you'll be able to impart some kind of practical advice or wisdom for them to gain like a new perspective on things so that they can take up their challenges more effectively. And if you're keen to learn some new things, which is third house that really tickles your interest, particularly if you're a student here, by the way, you may feel a bit more all over the place, I would say. And if you were to select any elective modules, probably around this Mercury retrograde, just take your time and just let it marinate in your mind for a bit before you make that decision. Because, for example, like if you take a prescribed elective module or certain foreign language modules that's on top of whatever you're studying, after this Mercury retrograde finishes itself, you may change your mind or it is not what you expected out of it. So there's that. And if you have assignments to catch up on, outstanding ones, get your notes in order. It's very good for filing and getting those notes rewritten in a very structured way in chapters. And you may also want to relook at your study plans as well for the upcoming semester months, for that matter. And I think I've reached the end of my presentation. A lot of things happening. Scorpio Rising.
Thank you so much, Donny. People have probably 4 or 5 times to take notes.
Right. I mean, people can watch it back and take notes. But I would say the overall message for Scorpio Rising here is your gifts are on full display. And over this year is you following through with any creativity or inspiration that arises within you. And following through with those things will help you to gain positive realizations and success. But having said that, some dramatic changes coming for you because of those eclipses.
Oh, for sure.
First 7th house and Mercury retrograde just go on and on and on, you know, like we have not 3 but 3.5 Mercury retrogrades in 2022. So
thank you so much, Donny, again. I tend to, on eclipses on my sun sign or ascendant and 7th house sign, I tend to get married.
do you just want me to like do 2-3 minutes to run through Putin's chart?
To put what?
Putin? Vladimir Putin.
It's been 2 hours, you know.
I think I spoke too much then.
People get scared when they see such long videos and they don't even click on it.
But just know that I think I want to say just 2 sentences. When I see 2022 energies in Vladimir Putin's chart, I'm not sure whether he can survive another assassination, in short.
Yeah. Oh, he might be assassinated.
More than once in 2022.
More than once, get killed a few times.
I don't know whether how many can, like a cat has got 9 lives, right? I don't know whether he's exhausted that. So.
Or maybe he steps down on his health or something.
Well, because the eclipses, all that, and everything just come together and his chart doesn't look good, like for the whole of 2022. I just want to put it out there. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you for telling us that.
Well, I'm just summarizing because I know that even my throat is drying up. So
Oh, thank you. That's been 2 hours. You are so dedicated and so in depth. Uh, wow. Thank you so much. And if anyone would
I
like
hope Scorpio risings will have, it's not all bad.
oh, there's a lot of things happening. There is the fifth house, the fourth house, the sixth house activations, then short
Eight house as well. Yeah.
eighth house. One of the most important probably this year. Yeah, from Mars there and Mercury for a little
And
bit.
Mars is their co-ruler, their ascendant co-ruler, right over there, staying for like a good
Yeah.
like a good chunk of was it? I forgot. Like with the
I would say from August it enters Mars.
right, it enters Gemini, and then you've got like a Mercury retrograde also in Gemini.
Yeah, so a big eighth house, very scorpionic.
It is, and hence like I decided to run with it and choose Scorpio because they are the most, I'm sure that they'll be going through a very I hate to say this, but bipolar year. The highs are highs, but the lows are like, but overall, there's the fifth house activation from Jupiter, Neptune, can be quite advantageous if they make use of it. Yeah.
So a bit of a roller coaster up and down, very colorful, very.
It is. And if they want to have a child, they'll be extra fertile for ladies.
Thank you so much, Donny. Have a great year ahead. Thank you so
Right.
much for joining us. If you'd like to see the rest of the signs, we'll have them by mid-December or even by the 11th of December. We're doing them sign by sign. And if you want to contact Donny, there is a link below.
Oh, by the way, I only left like 5 spots for my
promotion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Donny. I know it's overwhelming.
I know.
You're fascinating astrology, great presentation. Even while you're doing it, a few people already started ordering.
Well, after the mundane video, it just went a bit crazy.
Thank you so much.